Welcome to the Influencer Show with your host, Trishawn Ben Salmi.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Influencer Show, where I interview people who can help influence the way you live life in a number of different ways. I'm your host E7, and today we have a very special guest with us, Simon Alexander Ong. So if you'd like to tell the listeners a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on your show. I'm very privileged to get to do the great work I do today. That is coaching, that is speaking, that is, as you said in your title just now, it's impacting and positively influencing the lives of people around ourselves. But it wasn't always that way. I still remember receiving a call in the middle of 2007 telling me I just secured my first job out of university. And that job was to begin in the world of financial services, which, if you can remember back to 2008, it wasn't a great time to start in the financial services industry, because that was when we experienced the last crisis, the global financial crisis. However, that experience, as painful as it was at the time, it taught me many lessons. One of those most powerful lessons was taking the time out when I was made redundant from my first job to reflect on what is it I wanted to do. And I think that is a question that not many of us really take the time to explore and understand. What does success mean to you? What does fulfillment look like? And what sort of impact do you want to have in the world? Because unless you know the answers to those questions, it is very easy to fall into the trap of measuring your progress and your success against someone else's metric. And so for me, it was really about awakening myself to understand that life really begins only when we start taking responsibility for where we are and where we are going. That, to me, is the difference between a winner's mindset and a loser's mindset. Losers blame everyone but themselves, right? They blame the economy, they blame coronavirus, they blame their parents, they blame their company. But really, that is a victim mindset. Once we can take responsibility, we're able to focus on that which we can control. And it was really that moment when I started to understand what is it I wanted to do, that I started taking baby steps, following my curiosities, saying, what if this works? Why not just give it a try? And so I still stayed in the financial services sector for a few more years. But on the side of that, I began to explore what I wanted to do. And I made lots of mistakes. I failed many times along the way. But without those experiences, they wouldn't have taught me the wisdom and insight to have been able to transition out of being an employee to being an entrepreneur and doing the incredible things that I now get to do today, which is how we got to First Meet, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. That was absolutely amazing, and thank you so much for sharing. Why don't you share with the listeners why you do what you do?
For me, it's really about impact. It's about what I call legacy. Just imagine for a moment what your legacy could be. When you get to the end of your life, how do you want people to remember you? When I was working in the financial services, now, don't get me wrong, it paid well, it was a good job, but it didn't make me happy, it didn't make me fulfilled. And I just couldn't imagine getting to the end of my life and people saying, well, Simon worked the longest hours in the office. He got the most promotions in this company and he served the longest time. I couldn't imagine people would be saying that, because more often than not, what people talk about at the end of your life is the impact you have had on the lives of others. And that is what I wanted to do. For me, there's nothing quite like seeing the result and the rewards of people being transformed. Whether that is me speaking to an audience, and by the time that audience walks outside of the room, they come away with just one insight, one idea, or an inspiration moment that will allow them to move forward in something they have been putting off for too long. That might be what the audiences I speak to. With people I coach, is to awaken them to realize just how strong they are, just how resourceful they can be if they have clarity as to what is it they want, and then they have the courage and bravery to build their lives and careers around those answers. And when we do, we start to feel alive. And that is one of the most beautiful experiences of living, is to feel alive. Something I said recently at a talk I delivered was, so many of us feel tired and exhausted, not because we have done too much, but because we have done too little of that which excites us and makes us feel most alive.
That's very, very powerful, and that's so very true, because many people, when they're trying to start a business or just anything in life really, they often try to get into the markets which are the most saturated, which have the most money flowing in there. But actually it's about flowing your passion, and then the money shall follow you. So that I totally agree with that.
And I think you touched on something really important about money and value, because a lot of people go into business or entrepreneurship because they're seduced by the money. But the downside of that is that only lasts so long, because when times get tough, as they do, so you will inevitably encounter challenges and difficulties in business. But if you're only doing it for the money, you're going to give up very quickly when the first challenge comes your way.
Yeah.
Or you're not going to have the desire to really put the energy that is required to build a business. And I think people who have not started a business underestimate how much time and energy it takes to build a business. However, when you focus on something you are passionate about, that you can't help but read about, talk about, go to events about, then you will not be as tired, because you have this energy, you have this love for it. It is who you are. It is an extension of your identity. And so it's a lot harder to lose that energy, because it is something you want to do. And that is why it's important to focus on value, money second. Because when you focus on value, money, if you will, is an echo of value. The more value you can deliver and provide to the marketplace, the more money you will get. But too often when people focus too much on money, they sacrifice value.
Yeah.
And eventually what happens is you get bad customer service. The products are bad quality. And so that is sacrificed on the altar of trying to get a lot more money. And those businesses don't last. The businesses that do are the people that create such a powerful brand loyalty. Customers love buying from them because there's such a good emotional connection, and they give so much value that people can't help but want to come back and transact more.
That is so very true, and I hope that I really do urge you listeners to take notes on what Simon has said so far, so you guys do not miss out on these golden nuggets. Simon, what would you say has been the biggest influence on you that you wish you had known sooner?
So the biggest influence on me that I wish I had learned sooner, I think I would say two things come to mind at the moment. The first is your environment. I wish I'd learned at a lot earlier stage the sheer power of who you spend time with. Because what I've learned along this journey so far is environment is that invisible force that shapes your thinking, that shapes your beliefs, and that shapes what you see as possible. For example, if you spend most of your time around 5 multimillionaires, I guarantee in no time you'll be the 6th. Why? Because you can't help but embrace the habits, the thinking, and the philosophies of the people you spend time with. Your environment has a purpose, and it is either going to energize you or it's going to drain your energy. It is going to hold you to a higher standard, better than you know you are capable of, or it's going to keep you in your comfort zone. So that's why you've got to be so careful in how you manage your environment, what you read, what you watch, who you listen to, who you follow on social media, and who you spend time with. Because that has a profound impact on your mental well-being, your mindset, if you will. So I think that's the first thing that if I could go back, I would have started a lot earlier, because that has been so influential on my journey. Every time I upgrade my environment, I hang around with people even more ahead of me. What happens is my goals and my visions go from this big to stratospheric to galactic. It just keeps getting bigger. So environment is the first one. The second is the importance of habits. The importance of habits. And here is why habits are crucial if you want to up level in your life and business game. Because in life and business, you may not always get your goals, but I guarantee you, you will always get your habits. Habits are the things you do daily that move the needle towards the person you want to become. Habits are the very thing that reinforces and shapes your identity. If you feel you are someone who is a CEO, someone who has influence, and someone who is living the entrepreneurial life, but your actions don't justify that, your actions aren't aligned, then you're living a lie. But if your habits justify the identity you're living up to, guess what? It reinforces it. If you see yourself as healthy and you wake up and start each day by doing a workout, that reinforces the idea that you are a healthy, fit individual. If you believe you are a good business developer and each day you reach out to people, you build your network, then that again reinforces the idea that you are a good business developer. So those habits are so powerful. But the crucial part with habits is your ability to be consistent with them. There is no point starting working out every day and giving up after 3 months because you don't see the results. Good things take time. Good things take time. Denzel Washington once said, without commitment, you will never begin. But without consistency, you will never finish. And so it's that consistency of following through day in, day out. Because most people won't. Most people want things straight away. But here's the truth. There is no such thing as an overnight success. It is more over time success. So the two things I feel that have been most influential are one, environment, and two, your habits, and following through with those habits on a consistent basis.
That is so very true, because without consistency, you're not able to then see those results. Because yes, it's good to start, but it's about keeping that momentum throughout the whole time. And I really did like what you said about constantly trying to up level your network, because if you are, let's say that you're trying to achieve, and let's say you're trying to make $1 million in a year, you need to then surround yourself with people who have already surpassed that, because then they already know the tips or maybe even any secrets that can actually help you along the journey. And it's about acting as though you've already achieved it, acting as your higher self. So then that way you're then able to gravitate towards people and make those connections and just everything that you need in order to then generate the success, the results that you desire will come to you with ease, really.
Yeah. And I think you said something great there just now about working from our higher self. And I think that is the person we need to operate from. If we make choices and habits and decisions based on our current self, there is a long way to go.
Yeah.
But if we think from our higher self, for example, one of the questions I always reflect on every day is what habits, what choices, what decisions would I make today if I was already the person I want to be tomorrow? And if you are already the person you want to be tomorrow, you will make very different choices if you're thinking of the person you are currently. And that is very helpful in the decision-making process.
Definitely, I totally agree with that. And could you share with the listeners, how do you prefer to influence others to change the way they live their lives for the better?
Totally. I think, and I think this is a hard skill for many, because not all of us are conditioned to embrace this skill. But if you want to influence, if you want to really influence others positively and build a powerful network of deep relationships, you have to develop your ability to listen to others. Because when you listen to others, it allows you to connect in their world. Because here's the thing, there is no one reality. There's no one reality that we all experience. We are all living in customized realities. The way you might interpret an event would be different to the way I do, and it'll be different to a friend of mine. So what we can do is we can listen with the intent to learn, not the intent to apply. Too many of us are listening in conversations, but we are already forming what we want to say ourselves. But imagine if we put that to one side and we just be completely present. We listen to the person that we are speaking to, and we get curious. We get into a mode of wanting to understand where they are. Because once you do, and you're able to empathize and connect with that individual, you can guide that individual to a much better place because you have a deeper understanding of the challenges, the goals, the lifestyles that they are currently living. Otherwise, you are just forcing your idea of the world onto someone else. And that doesn't make sense because your idea of the world is based on your experience and your background and your upbringing, which will be very different to someone else. So the quickest way to develop greater influence is to listen. Because just reflect on this for a moment. When was the last time that you felt yourself deeply listened to by someone? And I'm not sure many of us can recall many moments, right? But imagine if you could give that gift to someone, that you could give that gift to someone where you just say to them after they told you about their day, tell me more. What is it about that made it challenging? What would make an amazing month for you? And you get curious, you give them a space to share what's in their imagination, to share what is in their mind. And you just go all Sherlock Holmes. You just get curious, you just investigate. And what happens is people love talking about themselves. And the more information you get, the more you can be helpful, the more you can influence, the more you can guide in a way that is relevant to that person.
It's so very true. I think that like in today's day and age, everyone's trying to like outshine each other, be like, hey, I know more. But actually showing that you can listen. For example, like you might be having a conversation with them, and if you are then able to listen and then make comments on that, it simply shows to the person that you are simply acknowledging and adding your say. So I think that's something that people should incorporate in everyday life, and also if they have their own businesses, really, because that's really, really key.
I was going to add, actually, you know what? A great activity for the listeners to do if they want to increase their influence now is think about who can you add some value to right now, or this week even. Who can you add some value to based on what you know about them? So, for example, I remember when I met someone a couple of years ago, and he told me he was going through a really stressful period. He was trying to secure some deals. He just had his second child, and it was quite a stressful period he was going through. So what I did is I sent him a playlist of music, and I say, just block out 15 minutes and listen to the pieces of music that I put together for you. And he simply replied to me and said, Simon, that was so thoughtful. That was so beautiful. I listened to that music and it evoked so much emotion, and it's inspired me to get more done and to manage my time better. So take a moment to reflect on how and who can you add value in order to make that person feel better based on the information that you know. And it doesn't have to cost you much. It might be maybe you send a link to a great article that would be useful to your friend, or send a book, or send a gift that is relevant to what that individual is going through. So have a think about that, and that is a great way to begin influencing people by showing that you listen and that you care.
That's a key one, because like many people, they love to just like talk, but if you actually show that you actually care and you're then thinking about that person even when you're not having conversation, it simply then helps to strengthen the relationship that you have as a person with that other individual. And what would you say people should do to stay motivated during moments of crisis?
So how do people stay motivated during crisis? I think that one of that goes back to environment. If you've got the right environment around you, i.e. You're spending time with some fantastic people, you're reading great books, you're listening to powerful conversations or audiobooks, I think that will help manage your motivation during these tough times. I think what's also important is to slow down. Is to slow down in order to speed up. We live in, I'm not sure about the listeners or about you, but I'm sure many of us listening are living in cities or areas where there's a big population. And so often we can get caught up in busyness. And the problem with that is it doesn't give us time to access our creativity and wisdom. And so by slowing down, it allows us and reminds us of what is most important. And it also allows us to get insight into how we can overcome certain challenges or difficulties that we are going through. And so a great activity that links to slowing down that I think can help you navigate times of uncertainty is the activity of journaling, of writing down your thoughts, capturing them on paper. You know, Richard Branson has this great habit of carrying a black notebook and pen with him wherever he goes. And he said the reason is because you never know what insights you might get from a conversation, from a thinking, from a reading a magazine. All these experiences might give you insights, but unless you capture them on paper, they will quickly disappear. They will quickly disappear from your thoughts. So journaling is a great way to put all of what's in your mind on paper, and it helps to clear your mind, to give your mind some space to think clearer. Otherwise, you end up thinking about your thinking about your thinking about your thinking, and you get so caught up in here that you feel stressed. The final thing I would add is keep in mind that events are neither good or bad, difficult or easy, or a problem or an opportunity. Events are whatever you make them to be, because events do not have an emotion. It is why some events to one group of people might be a problem, and to another group of people might be an opportunity. But in your response lies your power. In your response lies your power. How will you respond in times of uncertainty, on days when you don't feel as motivated? If you are aware that there are times that you get demotivated, or there are times where uncertainty will creep up, if you are aware of that, how can you future-proof yourself so you can navigate those stormy waters more smoothly? Now, not saying you'll never get a challenge, but as you be more comfortable in adapting to challenges, it will increase your resilience and your ability to manage yourself through these very difficult times.
That is so very true. I like the word that you used there, resilience, because when people often start something new, they often tend to give up when it gets tough. But it's actually about having that willpower to keep on going, because if it's your dream and if it's your passion, then nothing should be able to stop you from achieving what you have set out to do. And on that note, I'd like to ask, what is your passion?
For me, my passion is all about helping people. It's all about helping people. And the more people I can impact, influence, and inspire, the happier I am. You know, for me, the greatest reward in what I do is seeing testimonials, is seeing feedback, is seeing people share what they're up to, the difference that their life has taken, all the new things they never thought were possible, to move them from impossibility to possibility to inevitability. And that is, for me, my passion, is to inspire people to do the work that fulfills them, so they in turn get to inspire their own people. And that creates such a powerful ripple effect. And the more people that can do the work that fulfills them, the more people will be able to share their gift with the world. And how amazing would that world be when everyone is sharing what comes natural to them rather than doing what they think they should do?
That is so very true. It's about being content with yourself, so that you then have the confidence to say, this is what I stand for, and this is something that I'd like to pursue. And I totally agree with that. If you had a megaphone and you could say one thing to the world that would have a lasting influence, what would it be and why?
If I could say one thing to the world, well, for me, it would be about awakening people's perspective on the shortness of life. So I would probably say something along the lines of, we all have two lives, and that second life begins the moment you fully appreciate, understand, and realize that you have only one. You are a miracle. You literally are a miracle. According to scientists, the odds of you being born are over 1 in 400 trillion. Let's put that into perspective for a moment. Imagine the odds of your parents meeting, the odds of them deciding that they wanted to have a child, the odds that you were the child that they gave birth to, the odds that your grandparents and your grandparents' parents survived 2 generations of war. You are a miracle. We all want to win the national lottery. We all want to win the jackpot on the lottery. But what you have in your hand is the greatest lottery ticket there is, the lottery of life. And the question to you is, what are you going to do with that winning ticket?
Powerful, powerful. And I really do urge that you listeners actually do answer that question for yourself. Like Simon said, it's about journaling. That way you could then simply make each and every day even more productive. So what advice would you give to those who have had their very own £1,000,000 idea at a time like this?
So, well, first of all, I would say if you have any idea, let alone whether it's £1,000,000 or whatever, how much the value of the idea is the most important habit to embrace if you want to be successful is a strong bias towards action. A strong bias towards action. Too many people overthink. They overthink to the point that when people are dug into their grave, when people end their life, so much of their best music is still inside of them. They haven't shared their gifts or talents with the world. Don't let that be you. If you have an idea, start getting it out there. Start trying. Begin. Take some action now, today. You know, no one knows where things will be in the next week, month, or year. But what you can do, even if it's just one step, take that step today. It might be to call your friend, to do a bit of research, to register that business, to start that social media account, to record that video. Get started, because the earlier you get started, the easier it will be to get the understanding and the knowledge as to how to grow. Because you can't get the knowledge by sitting still and overthinking and theorizing. You only get the knowledge and the insights through practical experience, by doing, by taking action. So that's what I would say is the major habit. You want to close that gap between idea and execution. You want the gap to get smaller and smaller and smaller. So as soon as you got an idea, you test it. You test the idea so you get a feedback loop. Will this work? What do I need to change? How could it be better? Well, you'll never know the answers to that unless you take action. So however small, and remember, actions don't have to be big. It can be small. Imagine if you took one small step every single day this year, that would be 365 steps by the end of the year. If you look at a 12-month period, imagine how far you would be when you've taken 365 steps forward, however small. Because what we forget is steps compound. As you take more steps, the knowledge you gain from the earlier steps means that you can take bigger steps because you've got more confidence, because you've got more self-belief, because you've got more understanding of what it takes to get to that next level.
That is so very true, and I like what you said there about compounding, because people don't often understand how they can use compounding to their advantage. Because if you're then able to take those steps in the right direction over time, it will get to the point where you are one, if not two steps away from achieving your dream. So it's about maintaining focus and consistency, and that way then it's easy for you to set out goals and then achieve them in as little time as possible. And I really did like what you said there about taking action. It doesn't have to be always big action, because when people often hear the words like take action, do it now, they're thinking of like crazy things like there's no way I'm going to be able to do that. But it's actually about, like, let's say you might have a business idea. Maybe you could then go around to a couple of your friends, say, what do you think of this? Ask them to ask a couple of their friends. It doesn't have to be like massive, like loads of different things. It doesn't have to cost you to start out. It's just about taking those steps in the right direction, and then you shall grow over time. What would you say was the pivotal point along your journey, and what did it teach you?
Well, if I look back at my journey, I think the pivotal point was shifting my identity. So identity shift is very important, because at the early stage of my journey, I was still thinking of myself as a beginner. As you know, I'm a beginner, I'm an amateur, I'm just starting. But there's power in identity, because when you can associate with a particular identity, guess what? Your habits and your choices are easy. So for example, if you act as if you are already the CEO of your business, which you are if you're running your business, but you are already successful, you already have the influence to impact lives, then what happens is, if you believe all of that, if you see yourself and work from that identity, your choices are made, your habits are made. It's like thinking to myself, if I associate myself with the identity of an athlete and someone gives me junk food, I'm going to say no. I'm going to have healthy food, because the identity makes the decision. And it's the same thing with smoking. If you have friends that smoke, and one of your friends says to you, "I'm trying to give up smoking," I guarantee you that person hasn't given up. Why? Because they're trying to be an identity they don't quite believe yet. But if another one of your friends says, "I am no longer a smoker," what's happened is he or she has disassociated with the identity of a smoker and now sees themselves as a non-smoker. So really, for me, it was about embracing that identity of I am a coach, I am a speaker, I am an entrepreneur, and living that. Because once you've got your identity, you have to live it. Are your choices, are your habits aligned to that identity? Once you've got the identity, it creates a very powerful foundation to build from. You know, Usain Bolt once said his pivotal moment was something similar. He said, "I started to act as if I was already a world champion, record breaker, gold medalist." And what that meant was I woke up earlier than my other colleagues. I trained harder, I worked longer, I had coaches, I had a great team around me because I acted as if I was already the champion. I acted as if I had already won the gold medal. And so my thinking took on a whole new level. And what we learned from identity upgrades is getting that £1 million or building that successful business. That is not as important as who you must become in the process to make that happen. Because unless you can upgrade your identity to become a better person than who you were yesterday, no way are you going to be the person that is going to make that happen.
I think that's one thing that people often overlook, because when they look at their journey to success, they mostly focus on the success, but it's about the values, the lessons, the connections that you made along that journey that are going to be with you for the rest of your life. Because let's say that I was trying to set up a business, a marketing business, and then I bumped into loads of different people along the way and made amazing connections. Those connections can then stay with me for life. And let's say that I did have another fall along the way, I'm then able to then use those lessons, those connections to my advantage as a result of going on that journey. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't set goals to achieve, but it's not so much about focusing on that success. It's about the lessons and the life skills that you have learned as a result of going on that journey. And that's one thing that I really do urge you, because another thing that you said that I really did like and I picked up on was the I am statement. I am no longer a smoker, and that is really, really key. Those two words, I am, can actually change your life. So I really do urge that you listeners start your day with affirmations and things like that, just to simply encourage you and then set you on the right path to start your day.
Very well said. And I think when we talk about affirmations, if you are a skeptic, just reflect on this. Muhammad Ali didn't say, "I'm trying to become a world champion. I'm planning to be a better boxer." He said, "I am the greatest. I sting like a bee. I put people down quicker than medicine can." So what happens is he had this belief of an affirmation of I am, because whatever you put after I am, that has an impact on your subconscious. It tells your subconscious who you believe you are, and who you believe and think you are influences the actions that you take and what you see as possible. So it's less about I'll believe it when I see it. It's more I'll see it when I believe it.
That is so very true. I totally agree with that. And I really do highly urge that you guys as listeners then take these notes, so that then you are able to then emulate the things that we are teaching you today. Simon, what are the top 3 lessons that you have learned along your journey, and how did they influence the way you look at life?
Sure. So if I look back at my journey, think about the top 3 lessons. I think the first is, I think it sort of goes back to what I said earlier, environment. Environment is key. So the quicker I changed my environment, the more I saw was possible. Because before I made the transition, I was working in the financial industry. So by day, I was surrounded by people in finance. After work, I would go drinking with people in finance. And on weekends, I would be hanging out with people in finance. And so that was a very, very small field of people to be around, because there wasn't going to be diversity in thinking. So as I started to change my environment, I started to also make it more diverse. What I mean by diverse is not just people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different gender, but also people doing completely different things to what I'm doing. So now I get to hang out with a film producer, a musician, a tech entrepreneur, an artist, a chef. And the beauty of that, what happens is it starts to feed your creativity. It starts to give you different perspective. And that is what I learned is where innovation happens. Innovation does not happen when you look and try and beat your competition. Because if you look at your competition and try and beat your competition, you can only be as good as your competition. But if you look outside your industry, if you learn from people in different jobs, different businesses, different regions of the world, then what happens is you start to think more innovatively, more creatively. And so the first lesson for me is really about environment. The second lesson is don't care what people think. Don't care what people think. Now, what I mean by that, I mean, obviously it's great to get feedback. I'm not saying don't get feedback. But what I mean by don't care about what people think is that is one of the biggest obstacles against us, that plays against us for putting ourselves out there. Because we think if we release that video, if we share that blog, if we put that post out on social media, what will people think? Is it good? Is it bad? And so all of that thinking stops us taking action. But here's the thing, it is far better to be the person taking action, getting it wrong, learning, trying again, than it is to be the person that sits back and just criticizes everyone on social media by writing negative comments. You are going to learn so much more if you put those negativity to one side and realize those people might say to you, why are you doing that? You can't do that because of X, Y, Z. But eventually use that as motivation to prove them wrong. So eventually they'll say to you, how did you do that? How did you create this amazing business? How did you create this transformational lifestyle? So don't care what people think. Don't care about the negativity. Focus on what you can do. And if you are looking to get feedback from people that you admire. Get feedback from people that are showing you how it can be done. People that you respect. Get feedback from those people, not people who've never done what you're doing. Because it's easy for them to criticize because you are the one taking massive action. So that's the second one. The third lesson for me is the power of visualization. The power of visualization, that has had an amazing impact on my energy levels. My energy levels is high every day because of my ability to tap into visualization. So what do I mean by that, in case you have not experienced visualization or this is a new term that you're coming across? Visualization at its very basic level is your ability to emotionally tap into the vision of what you are looking to create. So if you want to have a quick go now, just bring to your imagination, what would life look like to you if every area that is most important for you is a 10 out of 10? So if your health was 10 out of 10, if your business success was 10 out of 10, if your relationships was 10 out of 10, if your finance and wealth was 10 out of 10, what would that look like to you? What would you be doing? How would that feel? Really see it. Where are you living? Who are you impacting? What are people saying to you? And what are you saying to yourself? And the more that you can see that in its entirety, the clarity of that, the colors, the excitement, the noise of all of this happening as if it is happening now, the more energized you'll be to make that happen. And that is the power of visualization, daily connection to what it is you are looking to realize in your lifetime.
That is actually so very, very powerful. And I think that people often underestimate the value and how impactful visualization can be just on its own, really, because then as a result of visualizing, you then get to feel a grasp of how it can feel, what it can be, and all those different aspects. And then it simply drives you even more to then achieve them goals and desires that you have set out in life. And as a result of then doing like visualization processes, you're then able to piece together that sort of like roadmap as to like what you have to achieve and by when. And that's another key thing that I really do urge listeners to get, because some of you may not be able to afford a mentor or coach, but maybe you could just have that friend who calls in on you maybe 2 times a month or something like that, just to make sure that you have then completed the things that you have set out to do, and that way you maintain steady progress in the right direction. So what, if you have to be another person for one day, who would it be and why?
If I had to be another person, I think there's too many people I admire and are inspired by to choose one person. So I'm going to cheat, and I'm probably going to answer the question a different way, because I recently got asked a similar question, and the question was, what job would I take, or what career would I take if I couldn't do the career I'm doing now? Because in terms of people, there's so many people that have influenced me positively and have had a great impact on my life. But when I think about a career that I would do if I didn't do or couldn't do what I do today, I think it would probably be acting, because in a way, I kind of act. You know, when you go on stage to speak, you are kind of acting. You're in front of a stage. You're looking to transform the lives of the people in front of you. You're looking to deliver a bit of inspiration. What you are doing is a performance. You are in a way you're delivering a performance that is focused on inspiring and moving people to action. And so that's why I think I would probably resonate with experimenting with some acting, because that's very similar. What you are doing is you are communicating a message or something with the audience, whether they are the audience at home or the audience in cinema. You are portraying a story or a character, and it is the audience and the people that will watch it that can see something in that character that they can resonate with. And I've always been fascinated about the acting industry. So I think if I didn't do what I do today, it would probably be something to do in the performance arts.
Oh, that's actually amazing. And that's actually so very true how you spoke about how acting is actually involved in public speaking, because you have to come across as that excited, that person who's then able to have a lasting impact on the listeners. Because if there's nothing like unique or maybe even catchy about you, people often tend to forget like the content and the tools that you're then providing with them. So it's about having that imprint on them, and that way it's long lasting, and then they are then able to use the lessons and teachings that you have to offer to then help them take actionable steps in the right direction. Briefly, you spoke about like legacy, and I wanted to ask, what legacy would you like to leave?
I think for me, when I think about legacy, before I had my first child, so my wife and I just gave birth a few weeks ago. Before that point, my legacy would have been about sharing the lessons, the insights, and the knowledge that I have personally gained in my journey so far, with as many people as possible, so that they can take those tools and they can apply them to their own life and experience their own personal transformation. So that is still my legacy that I'm working towards. But since I've now had a child, I've added a second bit to that legacy. And that second bit is to raise children who will have an impact in this world. So the children that, I guess now is one child, we may have a second, but the children that we raise, I want them to go on and have an incredible impact on the world. That would be also an incredible legacy to have.
Congratulations, and thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Is there anything you've done in the past, and now looking back on it, you may have wished you've done it differently or maybe even sooner?
Differently or sooner? I would say the only one, when I look back, because I kind of think everything worked out quite nicely, but the one thing I reckon I could have done sooner is video content. So the thing with social media is always changing, right? So, many years ago, it was, you have to have a blog. Yeah. Blogging was the thing. People became famous for writing blogs on the internet. And then things shifted to, Instagram. And then it was all about, pictures, put the picture on, and everyone moved away from blogging. And then it became the long caption. You added value through sharing your thoughts in a long caption on Instagram. And now with a lot more people watching things on YouTube and TikTok and Snapchat and all these other platforms, video has become even more important. So I wish I'd gone to video sooner, but I got more into video in the last 2 years, so it's been great to share videos on my social media, my LinkedIn, my YouTube, and Instagram and Twitter. So that would be the one thing I wish I probably captured sooner, just because I think when you're able to capture great content in the moment, whether that is you speaking or you helping people in public, and you can capture that content and share it online to your followers, you are able to spread that impact a lot further than if you didn't capture those amazing moments. So for me, from a business development point of view, that's one thing in hindsight I would have probably started earlier.
That is absolutely amazing. I really do agree with that, because like video is like the new go-to really, and people often focus on video just a lot because they're able to connect with you in ways that they're able to connect with you in ways that they don't believe they can through different avenues. So that is absolutely amazing. And could you share some advice with those who may be starting something new and are starting to give up?
Starting something new and give up. Well, I think the first thing to think about is make sure what you're working on is something you are passionate about. Make sure what you're working on is something you want to do, not because someone else wants you to do it, but because it is something you want to do. That's the first thing to keep in mind. Because one of the reasons we often give up is because deep down it's not what we want to do. It's what we think we should do to satisfy our parents, to satisfy our friends, to make ourselves look good to others. So first of all, make sure it is something you want to do. Second is assuming it is something you want to do and it is something you are passionate about, is understand the importance of persistence and consistency. We've touched on consistency already before, but what I mean by persistence is you will guaranteed experience some sort of failures. But the longer that you keep going and you keep pushing forward, taking those steps, learning, taking the hits, what's going to happen is this beautiful effect that there will be hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of other people around the world doing your exact same journey who will give up and go home. And here's the great thing: the longer you keep going, the less your competition becomes. The more people around you will drop out of the race, and that will leave a clearer finish for you to experience all the rewards. And keep this in mind, this is a great definition about doing the work that most won't. Because when you do the work that most won't, the hard work, the consistency, the persistence, challenges, and overcoming those challenges, what happens is you will eventually be able to live a life that most can't.
That is so very true. It's about putting in the work when others are willing to do, so that you can then receive the results in the long run. And lastly, where can people find you if they'd like to find out about any upcoming things you may have?
Sure. So there are many different ways, and for obvious reasons, because everyone has a different way to receive information. So if you prefer email, you can subscribe to my newsletter, which is on my website, simonalexanderong.com. If you prefer social media interaction, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter. The handle for my Instagram and Twitter is the same, and it is @SimonAlexanderO. So SimonAlexandero. So @SimonAlexanderO. Also, if you'd like to connect further, I run a Facebook group where I go live every week to answer your questions, share my latest insights, and interview some extraordinary entrepreneurs who have built some incredible businesses.
That is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, and I really do urge you listeners to go and check out Simon, and thank you for coming on the Influencer Show today.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you listeners for taking the time to listen.
Thank you. And also, once again, I'd like to thank you listeners for tuning in today. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. And if you guys seem to have missed anything, feel free to rewind the video so you do not miss out on any key tools that we have shared with you today. And if you would like to have the chance to be interviewed on the Influencer Show, be sure to email the email. It's going to be popping up on the screen. Hope you guys have a great day, and that's it from me. Bye.